Welcome back into the middle of it. I'm Jeb Hart. I'm happy to be here with y'all on this Thursday. Drake Pugh is in another studio. How are we, Drake?
I'm doing all right, trying to get everything back up and rolling.
Yeah, I know. Did we get that sorted? Where are we at?
I think so. Yeah, it's back up now. Just sometimes this happens. It goes down, and just
Well,
technology. You know how it is.
all right, perfect. Well, I do apologize because I know a lot of people do watch this back later. Our opening segment was, I mean, I guess I'll do a little distillation because it's not going to be recorded. It's fraud has been such a pervasive. I mean, going back to Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, trying to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. It's been something that we've had problems with in government for a long time, but it's really come to the forefront of our national discussion recently, um, and then re-highlighted again in Minnesota, and then back on the front pages with California. And it really is opening up a new narrative as to how pervasive all of this is. But with that being said, you look at it as a regular citizen, and to me, I just I was so taken aback that it's even possible because I was due to a rounding error on something like 3 years ago. I was $28 and I want to say like 63 cents short on my taxes, and that turned into a whole thing, and it was found immediately. And I mean, it's 25, like it was nothing. And it turned into a whole thing. I got caught immediately. So the idea that somebody could get away with 200 and something $1 million for a program that is so clearly fraud, like if you go, the videos from those hospice care facilities where the one that there's 82 in the single office part, like you cannot walk in there and not see a bed, yet you're getting millions of dollars in checks, and the inspector just it blew my mind away. So I what we dove into before is just how it's structured, and ostensibly it's everybody thinks someone else is doing their job because the money needs to move fast and the system is backwards. We we verify after we pay, and if we don't investigate before we grant the authority for them to start billing, we only investigate after red flags are raised, and they have to be really prevalent, and that's if they ever investigate at all. So they're very good at addressing the things they can see. The Jeb Hart $25.63 short. Boom, Jeb, got him. But when it's six shell corporations moving through a private intermediary, local or state provider, federal government, local government, there's so many people involved that it's messy and easily exploitable. And so the system does need to be flipped around. And the people, like I said, they don't have to be geniuses. They just have to be able to take the risk and recognize how the system actually works. Because now that we pulled the curtain back on how the system actually works, there is the obvious question of if this fraud is this visible, this widespread, this repeatable, why, for God's sake, doesn't it get fixed? And the answer is because fixing it is harder than exposing it. Because this isn't a break in the system, it is sadly how the system is built. Every one of these programs, healthcare, food assistance, COVID relief, runs on the same tension. Get money out fast, don't let the wrong people get it. And those two goals, while admirable, don't get along very well. Because the tighter you make the system, the slower it inevitably gets. The slower it gets, the more people who actually need help don't get it. That's a problem. So policymakers have chosen speed almost every time because politically, you know, it is far worse to be accused of denying help than it is to quietly allow for fraud.
Yeah.
And that's the trade off that they have chosen. And once you start to see it, it is really hard to unsee because a system as we have it now isn't optimized for accuracy. It is really good at distribution. Now, to stack on top of that, something a bit more uncomfortable is the fear. Because once fraud gets big enough, fixing it means admitting failure. And admitting failure means headlines, means investigations, and it means blame, whether it is with merit or without. There is blame. So, what do they choose instead? Delay, partial fixes. Let's put together a new committee to have a vote on a new subcommittee to do a feasibility study to potentially look into this and maybe make some new rules, maybe get a committee to, propose some new layers. Then that's the irony, is that every new layer that is supposed to fix the problem is often just makes it harder to see the problem at hand because you're more removed and you add layers of complexity in, and that's where fraud hides, is between the exchange from one hand to another. And the more complicated the system gets, the easier it is to disappear inside of it.
Hmm.
Now, so that brings the question, what would actually work? Because there are answers, but they're not easy. The main one would be real time verification before checks got sent. Because, like we addressed before, right now the model is pay now, check later, flip it. Use data, cross agency visibility, pattern detection. You know, if 40 providers are billing from the same address and that doesn't trigger a meeting somewhere, then that's a problem. It should trigger a stop.
Yeah.
But the way it's set up now, it doesn't. But if you flipped it, it would. And the second part is that there has to be ownership. Right now, too many hands touch the money for anyone to be fully liable. There's state, federal, like I said, private intermediaries, PBM, everybody participates, and no one has to own the full responsibility. And that was a design flaw that was meant for efficiency, but accidentally made it so that there's a lack of accountability. Because when everybody is responsible, no one's fully accountable. Like 20% here, 5% there, 10% on you, maybe 25% on you, Jerry. You really should be paying attention. Like, like if you want change, you have to assign ownership. And like one office, one chain of command, like if something breaks, you know exactly where to look. Because right now, if something breaks, you got to point more than, two hands worth of fingers at 12 to 30 people. And because of that, we lack another major problem is the speed of the consequences. Because right now, enforcement is so slow, if it ever comes at all, years later, well after the money is gone. And that's not deterrence, that's documentation after the fact.
Yeah.
If you ever want to change behavior, the system in place has to say in no uncertain terms, if you try this, you will get caught quickly. Right now, nobody believes it and they have no reason to. And that perception matters because if they have no reason to be deterred, why would they not give it a go? And we have to stop, and I think this is a big one. We have to stop treating it like it's a glitch because it's not. It is a feature of the system. It's structural. And structural problems don't get fixed by press releases. They get fixed with a redesign. And that's the reality check. Even if you did all of that, you wouldn't eliminate fraud. That's okay. You reduce it. Because when you move billions of dollars through incredibly complex systems that are kind of built on top of one another as they go, not cohesively built to function with one another, somebody is always going to take advantage. That is human nature. But right now, we're not just dealing with human nature, we're dealing with systems that make it so easy for human nature to run its course. Because if you see cracks and you see easy money, you go for it. And that's the difference. Because we now have to bring it back to the simple part is because the reason this hits people the way it does is that it isn't just money, it's the fairness. Because this feels like if you play by the rules, you get scrutinized. If you truly understand the system, like these people in these fraud systems do, you can exploit it. And that is a dangerous place for a country to be in because once people believe that the system isn't fair, they stop trusting it. And when trust goes, everything else is soon to follow. And that comes down to compliance or participation, the belief in legitimacy, all of it. So, yes, this is about fraud, but it's also about something a lot bigger. It's about whether people believe the system works the way it's supposed to. And right now, a lot of people don't. And because the real problem isn't just that people are stealing from the system, it's that the system is starting to convince people that following the rules might not matter. And once people start believing that, you don't just have a fraud problem, you have a trust problem.
Yep.
And that's a much harder one to rebuild because once trust goes, because then you have people, like people like me who, just a little short on the taxes, you get thrown through the ringer, and you have daycares with no children getting millions of dollars with 48 violations on their state licensing, inspections and still cashing checks. You start to wonder, do I even understand the system at all? And what am I missing that makes that possible? And yet I get my feet put to the coals. And because I think it's pretty easy for someone who does adhere to the rules to to not recognize the dark side that does exist, because it's something that like I've never looked into. Like let's maybe dabble in a little bit of tax fraud today. Like it's never crossed my mind to even give that a go. So most of us are so unfamiliar with how viable that actually is. And in a lot of cases, by the time the enforcement comes around to in, check it, the red flags are there, license gets suspended, the companies dissolve, the money's already been paid out. Companies dissolve, they were built with a bunch of shell companies, and then that becomes another audit to track it down. And since there's no criminal like proceeding actually done, if the company no longer exists, a lot of times they're not going to open a criminal investigation to see if the suspicions they had are real because the place isn't around anymore and they're not cutting checks. So they'll just open a new one with a different name, start the process back over. You're playing a waiting game until the fuzz catches up to you, but by the time you know they're on to you and by the time that you face any real consequences, there's so much lead time to cut bait and run or, burn the place to the ground and hide somewhere else that the system just all it has to do in the first place is flip the payment and verification timelines. Verify everything before any, and that seems like common sense to anybody. Like verify that they are doing the thing they say they're doing before we send the money. That's true in almost every other aspect of commerce. You don't just send money to people that you don't know because they filled out some paperwork and assume they're going to do it correctly. Like no part of that is normal, yet we accept it in at massive scale in government because they prioritize expediency over verification because it looks better, and because the system is built that way. So often they get more political points for the speed, and the very slow under the table fraud that's happening a lot of times doesn't raise its head at all because it never gets caught. So they're not liable for it in the public eye. And then when it does come up, it's oftentimes so later that either not an election cycle, that person's on to something different, or, it's far enough removed where you can claim, you can be like, I'm not culpable in this. So the incentive structure is all from the politician side because the more you delay it, the further removed you are from it. And you're addressing it now. You're like, we just found out about this. Now we got to get to the bottom of it, when everybody's known for a long time. And I think that's kind of the important thing to look into when we keep seeing this, is to understand why it's even possible to happen, because we get so derailed right now talking about, the Somali population. Then people who are against it will say you're zeroing in on just one segment of the immigrant population. The other side would say, well, fraud is significantly higher on average in that community than others, but that obfuscates the point. Two things can be true at once. Fraud can be way too easy to commit, and the Somali population in Minnesota also probably noticed that pretty early on and has decided to go through that. I mean, the and send money back to Somalia. They're separate conversations that we keep melding into one. And then with the Somali thing, people who are against it just say it's racial profiling or Islamophobic or whatever buzzword you want to use to try to, in any way, delegitimize the scrutiny that they're facing by saying it's targeted or something. That part is completely separate from the very real fraud that's happening. They are overlapped, they're connected, but they're not the same conversation. And I think that people have a problem with that. Are we up against a break?
Oh, we still got time.
Okay, sorry, I saw your hand going.
No, 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 no. That was just me moving my hand.
Yeah, people want to jump to the identity, and I think people on the right did a very poor job of prioritizing the Somali community, because that was where it was happening, making that the. And I know within Minnesota it is a thing because it is such an important voting bloc for the Democratic Party within. And there was stuff with the Attorney General who had that recording of him saying, "I'll get them off your back." There are things that are tied through political motivations to that, group of Somalis in Minneapolis and Minnesota as a whole. However, when we make those two the same conversation about fraud being way too easy to commit, oversight being flawed, it becomes an identity conversation, not a structural governmental conversation. And that leads us too far afield from what a solution could actually be. And it turns us into arguing about whether or not we're only looking into this fraud because they're Muslim and Somali, or immigrants, or because people don't like Ilhan Omar on the other side, or take your pick of reasons people will try to delegitimize the scrutiny they're receiving and put it under a basket of one motivation or another. But that does not mean that that's the case. And when you conflate them, you just muddy the waters and you just get further and further and further away from something that can actually fix it, for the sake of getting to prescribe what you believe to be the other side's motivation in calling this out or highlighting this at a large scale. And people on the left do recognize this as a vulnerability, so they are trying to distance themselves from it, because they recognize a fraud at any level is terrible. We must stop it at all costs. This is not just you heard Tim Waltz and Gavin Newsom and everybody else say, this isn't just a California problem. This isn't just a Minnesota problem. This is not. Everything they can do to distance themselves from it, it comes back to the idea that there is no one person responsible or no singular accountability involved, because everybody touches it, so nobody is completely responsible for holding the end result of the failed system. And Tim Waltz can claim his 20% culpability and then say, I take responsibility. The buck does stop with me, but these 20 other people probably should have done some stuff too. And then I could sit on a pulpit and act like a big man and say, I have to take responsibility for this. Also, give them a talking to, because they should have done it. But I am a big, strong, important leader. You don't get to say, I take full responsibility, and then the next sentence give a laundry list of other people who are responsible. That's not how full responsibility works. That's just it's a literary note, just general phonics grammar and what words actually mean. But when there's too many people to share the responsibility, no one can ever go down. And that's why it continues to proliferate as much as it has, is because the system is designed to not hold one person accountable for a failing. And to be fair, that's true, because no one person is actually responsible for the failing. There are so many people who failed just a little bit, or in some cases, people who actively failed a lot or incompetently failed a lot. All of those things can be true at the same time, but none of it changes until accountability is works its way into the system. Otherwise, it just repeats as part of a news cycle, some, you know, groveling, press conferences mixed in with a bit of finger pointing to get all the weight off of you in the next news cycle, and then rinse and repeat until someone gets held accountable or the system changes to make that even possible. There is nothing that can be done about this except for post facto prosecutions that maybe limit people's ability to think they'll get away with it. But even then, a lot of people, if you're willing to take that risk, most of them are willing to take it. If the alternative is poverty versus driving Porsches, and then you get a few years in jail for a white collar crime, it's not a violent crime. You're not going to Rikers or the place where they kept El Chapo and Epstein and Diddy. Like, you're going to a medium security prison, 3 meals a day, and you're willing to do it. They're not going to stop because of, the system holds those accountable who commit the fraud, because there always will be fraud. They're willing to risk it. The system needs to be built better to detect it earlier and not send checks until they know the legitimacy. And that seems so straightforward. Make sure it's a real thing before you throw money at it.
Yeah.
I don't know why that would be that complicated of a process. And I know from a politician standpoint, like I had referenced before, that speed of getting people money, especially within your district, is a huge asset. Say, look what I have done. So quickly I got you the money that I promised you I would. And people are always so excited to get money that they don't particularly care how you got it. Like, if someone handed you like $300, your first question wouldn't, and they're like, hey, I want you to have this. You'd be like, no, please, I don't need this. What's this for? Your question wouldn't be like, did you mug somebody for this? Did you steal it? Like, did you rob a bank? You don't ask where it came from. You're excited to get it. You might ask a few passive questions, but you're not gonna like read them the riot act to try to figure out what happened. You're just excited to get it. So when the politician gives you the money, you don't ask how they got it. That was impressively fast, but it should be. It's like, if you go to a diner, have you ever been to like a diner that has like a 7-page menu?
Yeah.
There's one called the Landmark Diner near where I grew up in Atlanta, and it had a 7-page.
It's insane.
Everything from breakfast to lobster tail to like boudin sandwich. Like, it was everything. And like, my buddy ordered a lobster and a waffle and bacon. We had a cocktail or two, and like, the lobster came out faster than the waffle and bacon did. And I was like, that seems impossible. That shouldn't have happened that way. Like, that order seems wrong. And that's how people should, like, you're like, okay, this money came to me way too fast. It shouldn't. I know how government works. It shouldn't work this way. Like, the lobster shouldn't show up before the waffle. And you should ask those questions, but most of the time, but he didn't ask those questions because he was excited to get his lobster, so he just ate it. I was sitting there, I didn't have any food, and I'm looking at it being like, that is way too fast to cook a lobster. And like, was it sitting back there? Was it already ready? Like, I got questions. And people don't do that enough because you're just excited to have the lobster. So, we'll circle back around on this. We were getting near the top of the hour, and I ran a little bit long with that one. So let us circle back. We'll get to a few things with DHS funding upon our return. And I appreciate y'all being with us. Thanks for being in the middle of it. We'll see y'all after the break.
This is Coach Tredaris Goff from Columbia Central High School football. You are listening to 101.7 WKOM in Columbia, Tennessee.
We at Hollins Pharmacy must be doing something right. We've been providing pharmaceutical services in the Middle Tennessee area for over 60 years. The guiding principles of our business are fast, accurate, friendly, personal service. We do not have long waiting lines, and our phone calls are answered by a staff member. We strive to get to know our customers by name, not just a date of birth or number. We are your locally owned hometown pharmacy, and we appreciate your business. We urge you to come visit us at Hollins Pharmacy, 1608 Hatcher Lane here in Columbia.
Hey, this is Derek Ransom with 10 Pin Alley, voted #1 family entertainment center in Murray County. We offer 32 bowling lanes, giant arcade, laser tag, bumper cars, and a full cafe and bar menu. We also specialize in group events, kids and adult birthday parties, company parties, sports team parties, and holiday parties. We're located at 322 East James Campbell Boulevard in Columbia. Call us today at 931-381-BOWL or visit us at 10pin.com. 10 Pin Alley, it's where the good times roll.
In today's uncertain world, you can never be too careful about your family's financial future. That's why the Parker Group, a part of Baird's Private Wealth Management, is offering a free second opinion on your financial plans. Let us review your current plan, and we will identify any gaps and offer suggestions to improve it. Please call the Parker Group at 931-548-3737. That's 931-548-3737. Robert W. Baird and Company Incorporated does not offer tax or legal advice.
This is Mark Curry at the Trailer Store. We are a local, family-owned business. Every day, I work with my wife, Susie, my mother, Becky, and my son, Justin. We offer a full line of lawnmower trailers, utility trailers, stock trailers, and a full line of trailer parts. We also offer service. Come see us at 1021 New Lewisburg Highway. Call us at 931-381-2795. That's 931-381-2795.
Farmer Johnny here, Taylor Family Farm. I want to give y'all a little look-see. We raise 100% non-GMO, grass-fed beef, pasture chicken, and pork on our family farm. Everything that we grow is raised with love and care to ensure the highest quality and nutrition for our family and customers. You can shop online at TaylorFamilyFarmTN.com or visit our farm store in person at Etheridge, Tennessee at 301 Dave Reisner Road. That's TaylorFamilyFarmTN.com for more information.
Hi, I'm Kelly Dobson, owner of Caring Hearts Home Healthcare here in Columbia. For over 20 years, we've proudly served our community, locally owned and operated, providing trusted care you can count on. We support seniors, individuals with disabilities, and even short-term care after surgery. From personal care to homemaking and companionship, our team is here to help you or your loved one live safely and comfortably at home. Call Caring Hearts today at 931-381-5470 or stop by in person, 1121 Trotwood Avenue here in Columbia.
Hello, I'm Rick Whitley.
And I'm Daniel Pollard from Jones & Lang Sporting Goods. We would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for the many years of support. Since 1966, Jones & Lang has been locally owned and operated and supplying teams from T-ball to college. Stop by and see what we can do for you. We offer a wide variety of services from silk screening and embroidery to our custom trophy and awards department.
We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and Saturday, 9 to noon. Remember, Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Hello, my name is Zach Maddox. I'm a proud third-generation owner-operator of Columbia Paint and Wallcover, founded by my grandfather, Ralph Maddox, in 1946. We offer a variety of paint and wallcovering products, but our passion is customer service. We can offer many personalized services and can come out to your house or business if needed. Come visit us at our Columbia location or our new Spring Hill location behind Church of the City, or visit us online at paintcolumbia.com.
This is Coach Devin Simler from Columbia Central Baseball. You are listening to 101.7 WKOM in Columbia, Tennessee.
And we're back, Jeb.
Oh, I apologize.
No. I apologize. I had to step out for a minute.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, for everybody, listen, we're in this secondary studio. Drake's doing his best here, but the audio for the bumper music, I'm not catching. So
Yeah.
I apologize if my intro is not meshing with the audio for the music as well as it should. So thank you for bearing with us on that regard. Thank y'all for being with us in the second hour. We are currently in the middle of it. And Drake, I appreciate you doing your best here.
Absolutely.
We spent the first hour, some of it not available on the internet, talking about fraud as a holistic entity and a structural problem, not a city-state one, or a Somali problem, or a democratic problem. It's a structural issue that needs fixing, and then that does segue well into an additional structural problem we have in our political discourse, and that is the ever-moving goalposts that no one talks about. And because I want to talk about something that happens in Washington all the time, but it almost never gets called out clearly while it's happening. We normally wait a bit later to have a little retrospective view on it. But for weeks now, we've heard a very specific argument from Democrats regarding DHS funding. It was simple, repeatable, almost rehearsed, because it was. Lines. We'll fund TSA. We'll fund FEMA. We'll fund the rest of the DHS. Just carve out ICE. That's been the message over and over and over again. Press conferences, interviews, long-winded floor speeches. And, politically, it's a pretty good line. It paints Republicans as reckless, uncaring, obstructionists, the ones willing to let airports back up to the streets just to make a point. And they get to say, we're trying to keep things running. They're the problem. It's clean. It's emotional. It's easy to sell. It certainly avoids a lot of the subtleties and honesty behind that argument, but it is easy to sell. But you have to be honest that the message wasn't for lawmakers. The message was for you, the voter. For people catching 20 seconds of a clip on their phone. That's who it's for. Because that's also where it gets interesting. Because then Republicans yesterday, they moved from their position and they said, you know what? Screw it. I mean, this TSA thing is getting out of control. ICE is funded for another 2 years. Let's separate ICE out and let's fund the rest. Now we have to stop right there. Because what you were told for weeks, because that's the problem, is that if what you were told for weeks was the full story, then that should have been a breakthrough and that should have been the end of it. Should have been the done deal, and that should have led to a press conference and a victory lap. Chuck Schumer on the podium, smiling and talking about progress and all, them winning, and that's not what happened. The answer is still no. They came to them and said, we'll agree to your terms, and then they said no. And that's where the whole thing starts to feel like it is what it actually is, and that is theater. Because when you spend weeks saying, just do this one thing, and we'll move forward, all the while demonizing the party for not doing that one thing, and then that one thing gets done, and you still don't move, you didn't just move the goalposts, you picked them up, you walked down the field, and hoped nobody noticed. And that's kind of the thing that scares me, is, to be fair, Democrats are going to say that this was never just about carving out ICE. I can tell you right now what they're going to say, is that don't think about anything I said before. Y'all misheard that. It wasn't about cutting ICE out of the funding. We never meant it that way, even though they said it thousands of times across multiple senators and congresspeople. They'll say it's really about reforms. It's about guardrails, changes to enforcement. We need those to be binding. And they do want that to be the case, but they were always like, we're not going to get the ICE thing done in a period of time that's doable. It's too complicated. But it is tied to DHS funding. So if you cut that out, we'll deal with that later. while I disagree with it from a leverage standpoint, I understand why they were like the ice one we have a problem with and it's going to take longer. I thought it should be packaged in there because that was the leverage. But if they're willing to do it, and since they're funded for 2 years, I get it. But they might have wanted those reforms, but they can't say that funding of TSA was attached to those reforms because that is the problem. That is not what they told the public. The message wasn't carve out ICE. The message wasn't carve out ICE and then we'll negotiate further. The message was carve out ICE and we'll pass the funding bill. Full stop. So when they pull this 180 and the answer is still no, people start to feel like they're being managed, not informed. And that's where credibility problems begin. And you have to start with the lame duck ex-politician or leader in name only of Chucky Schumer for a second, because this is where the
That's funny. I like that, Chucky Schumer.
This is where he's just
he's a joke.
This is where leadership or the lack thereof matters, because you can't go on camera day after day repeating the same focus group driven talking points and then saying that Republicans are refusing to fund TSA while behind the scenes the reality already shifted. That's not messaging, it's narrative control. That's hoping your audience hears version 1 and never sticks around long enough to hear version 2. And maybe that works for a news cycle with friendly aligned media. It might work for a headline, depending on who's writing it. But it doesn't hold up over time because people aren't as checked out as Washington thinks they are. They might not follow every detail, but they can feel when something doesn't line up. And right now, it doesn't line up because everybody is taking 1 or 2 steps back, because this isn't just about one bill. It's about leverage and how it actually functions. Because if you're in the minority, you don't have many tools. I understand that. So when you get one like a must-pass funding bill, you use it. I get that. You push, you try to extract more. It's not shocking. It's politics 101. But there is a line that you shouldn't cross. You can't run one play publicly and a completely different play privately.
Yeah.
And expect people not to notice it eventually. Because when strategies changes, yet the message doesn't, that's not communication. That is magician level misdirection. And you got to call it what it is. This isn't about confusion. It's about presentation. It's about maintaining a narrative that is politically useful, even after it stops being accurate. That's where people get frustrated, because most Americans aren't sitting here reading the text of every bill. They are hearing clips, sound bites, talking points of people who they believe to be reputable and giving those talking points to them to distill down the accuracy of it for easy digestion, not to obfuscate the truth for their own benefit. They believe they're being informed, but they're not. They're being sold something.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, to be fair, Republicans play their own games. They're not innocent in all of this.
No, not at all.
But in this specific sequence, the timeline matters. Democrats said do X, Republicans did X, and the response became, actually, we need X plus Y. And fine, that's negotiation. That is how the game works.
Yeah.
But you have to say that. Own it. Say, we're pushing for more now. That they showed their hand. They thought they were calling our bluff, but now that we know they're willing to negotiate, we're going to try to get more out of it. I would disagree with that, especially since the previous messaging they put forward, but I'd at least respect it because it's honest and truthful and be like, they're willing to give on this. Let's see what else we can get. But they're not doing that. They're pretending nothing has changed. But people can feel when things shift, even if they can't map out exactly every detail. Once that feeling sets in, trust, again, starts to erode. And trust is way harder to rebuild than it is to spend. So, we have to have clarity, because that matters, but honesty about what you're actually doing matters more. Because in politics, it's not just about what you do, it's more about what you say you're doing and how good you are at making those two things match in a narratively engaging, repeatable, and digestible way, even if those two things aren't anywhere close to one another. And because right now those two things aren't, and that gap, that space between the message and the reality, is where credibility builds a cabin and dies.
Yep.
And no matter where you land politically, that should bother you. And because it is absolutely, for the average person, it's undoable to read all of these bills or truly understand everything that's happening. It's their job. Me as somebody who covers this, it is mine as well. But for the average person, they are always going to lean on a figure in authority who's read the stuff they assume they have. There's thousands of stories about budgets being, 4,000-page budgets being dropped off a few hours before a vote on them happens, where it's completely impossible for anybody to have actually read it. So it's one of those things that the people who are just trying to live their life and make an effort to stay informed are, if you're a Democrat who's been following this whole thing, you believe that the Republicans were trying to be obstructionist in TSAs and throwing a little pity party because they wanted the ICE stuff and weren't even willing to have a conversation about it. When in reality, if you understood what it was they were utilizing leverage. The Democrats were trying to do the same and see who blinked first, when both of them could have started funding if one of them capitulated. So it's on both parties equally.
Yeah.
So trying to shift the blame to one side in the previous iteration of it was unfair because they were both equally responsible. They're both playing their side of the game. But in this case, as it's matured into this iteration, where the Republicans agreed to what was their only caveat for this funding and they rebuffed it, becomes a completely new narrative and a completely new, timeline of events. And up until this point, I have yet to see them address it for what it is we saw that they, bent the knee on this. Let's see what else we can get. No, they're still saying it's the Republicans' fault for shutting that down because they don't care and they're mean people. And like I said, you can play that playbook before when they weren't budging. It's a little intellectually dishonest, but it plays well. And, but this one doesn't, yet they won't be honest about it, and it'll continue. And people who rely on them for their, information about what is going on are being sold a prepackaged bill of goods that leaves out a lot of the bad details or a lot of their party's shortcomings. I mean, you always try to put forward a good image and sand down the rough edges to make things a bit more palatable. Everyone does that with themselves or bad news or whatever. PR firms don't exist for no reason.
Yeah.
But there is a difference between rephrasing something to land softer and pretending you never said something at all and just moving on with your life as though none of that was ever uttered aloud, is where you just either realize that people don't want to know, or the people who are saying that believe that they're not going to check, or they'll just believe them at face value, and that'll be enough. Because anybody who's willing to look into it at all will recognize it for what it is. But maybe they're hoping that the people who are going to look into it were never going to vote for them anyway. So hopefully we can trick enough people, is what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
And that's true of a lot of things in politics. Is hopefully we can trick enough of them with this misdirection or this line of communication or this branding, or this think tank came up with this new turn of phrase. Let's cycle that tested really well. And people can feel when they are being manipulated now more so than ever because people do have an eye out for it much more so than they did in generations previously. And I'm not from those generations, but I can't say whether or not it was worse back then, but I certainly know that people weren't as diligent at looking for it because there was a trust in the media and mainstream media and in newspapers that things were vetted. They were not politically leaned or altered, or headlines were not suggestively written to frame what's to follow in a certain light, or people weren't looking out for it as much. They are now, so I hope that people have the ability to see that when they're being sold something or when they're being asked not to look any further back, or we're past that now, or we've changed, or we're looking towards the future. I mean, while it's an admirable thing to do to look towards the future because the future is all we have left, you don't get to look towards the future at the expense of ignoring your past and how you even got to the present in the first place. Because it would be a lot easier in anything in life if you screwed up, and like if I was at like a murder trial and my defense could not be, oh, judge, that was in the past. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't fly.
I mean, that's a different guy. He's not here anymore. I'm looking forward to the future. I mean, I just feel like we should all just get over this. And I mean, you're making a big deal out about this, Judge. I think that you're just being a bit of a drama queen, and
that's like the same mentality as like the people being like, I mean, I don't know if anybody's actually said this. It's just in memes that, Your Honor, shut up. You weren't there.
Yeah, I mean, it's people, but you want to just let them, let it run its course, and people believe that in politics. Where like, I mean, Schumer said it. It wasn't a House speech; it was a press gaggle, where they asked him about all the fraud and all the stuff with Biden, and not. He said, we're just looking forward, looking towards the future, and that was a line that got, clearly focus grouped because Hakeem Jeffries said it, and then 25 other people said it the same day. So clearly they got a memo card, and you cannot just run away from your actions and hope that the public who saw your shortcomings is going to allow you to run away from them only to have them repeat themselves later on. Because if you just pretend like they didn't happen, no reasonable person is ever going to think that changes will be made if you're not even willing to admit that an issue happened in the first place. I get that they're going back in time and relitigating something in a lot of instances can be a waste of time and emotional capital. But if it's something that continues to repeat itself, mistakes continue to be made, problems continue to arise, and the ripple effects spread and spread, you do need to go back to the root of the problem and suss out what the issue is so it can be fixed. And the first part of that is admitting that there's an issue. I mean, it's Alcoholics Anonymous, admit I have a problem. Step one. You can't get anything else done until you admit that there's a problem that needs addressing. And when the stakes involved for admitting there is a problem is such a loss of political capital that you are willing to do nothing for the sake of political expediency or your poll numbers, you're not willing to even say a problem that's right in front of you is a problem because of how it might reflect on you or your ability to get reelected, or any of that is the problem, because that is the incentive structure to do nothing, is to hope it, because nobody cares about $10 billion going missing if they don't know that it's missing.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how much. I mean, you can know how much the budget is, like that's published, the states vote on it, and the federal government votes on it. Like, you know what it is, but you don't go line item by line item of, they spent this much on pins, or unless it's, the Department of War's, lobster budget that everybody skewered when it's for soldiers. Like, people looked at that like Pete Hegseth was just like putting like ground up lobsters into an IV and like putting it straight into his veins. Before people go into, I don't know if you've heard that story, but the DOD, they had a line item bill of just millions of dollars on steaks and lobsters.
Dang.
But it's been a long running tradition in the armed forces that before people, go into live combat or active duty or get deployed, they normally send them off with a really nice dinner like steak and lobsters.
Yeah.
So kind of a long running gag within.
Get you all fat and happy, and then go get you killed.
Yeah, I mean, like people would, like in Afghanistan, they'd go into the chow hall and they would be having steak and lobsters, and they'd be like, "Oh shoot, something's happening.
Yeah.
We're about to go do something serious." But I mean, it's like a long running thing, but people put that on him, and that was just a narrative talking point. But I say that to say that people don't go through those line item lists of overall budget to know that this money was misallocated if they don't know that it was, because it's so much money. It's billions and billions of dollars to most people is such a hypothetical amount of money that it's the same thing like the number infinity. Like we know that it means forever in every number, but we rarely actually practically think about what that means. That like the word keyboard could be a number if it goes on forever. Every single thing is a part of it.
Yeah.
Forever means forever. And so like it's incomprehensible for us. And billion is similar. And so when it's gone, you don't really have, it's not like $5 got taken from your wallet that you can contextualize. It's so much more. And so people, the incentive structure for them to not even address that it's a problem is more politically beneficial than fixing the problem. And that is a huge issue as well. When you're not incentivized to do your job well because it means pointing out things underneath you that are not functioning well, there's too much of a fear that the sole blame of a poorly functioning system is going to be put on the shoulders of the person who points it out or the person it's under. Then they become incentivized to do nothing at all, because then they can bury their head in the sand, cover their ears, close their eyes, and wait until the next election season comes along and hope that it doesn't rear its head before then. That's the politically savvy move for them as an individual. For society as a whole and for the taxpayer, it is detrimental. And there's got to be a change in that incentive structure to where people should be rewarded for pointing out the shortcomings within their own systems and fixing them, not being blamed for their existence. Because I don't know how we as a society have spent so much time complaining about government inefficiency, addressing the need for bureaucracy to do better, for government to stop spending so much money on ridiculous stuff. And then when people try to fix it, they're the ones who are shouldered with the totality of the blame for its existence in the first place. And, you look at the Minnesota thing where so many whistleblowers brought this up. They were told to shut up because it was problematic. It was politically kind of minefieldy for them.
Well, you mentioned whistleblowers. That takes me back to John Kiriakou, the former CIA agent that blew the whistle on the CIA, and he got sent to prison for it.
Yeah. I mean, again, his one, they kind of manufactured some charges, and the stuff in Minnesota, they went and had a bunch of paperwork, complaints, written, explanations as to what was going on,
yeah,
why it was a problem, what could be done about it, and they were basically told to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
It was a political third rail for them, and they were going to let it go. And so, the people that actually looked at it got in trouble from their own government because they're like, you cannot tell people that there's a problem. We're going to get in trouble. From us as voters should reward good behavior, which is pointing out where problems are and not shoot the messenger for trying to fix it. Because whether or not you point out a problem does not change whether or not it exists. It exists on its own. Whether you close your eyes and don't see it or you open it and face it head on, it doesn't change the fact that it's there. And we as voters should reward people who address the hard things, especially when there is that potential for negative political ripple effects to them, because those are things that actually fix problems and make them better. You have to take that on the chin because this idea that it's not going to exist unless people know about it. It's not a Schrodinger's cat situation to where if you look at it, then it makes it real. It's real. It's happening. The money is going out, whether you care to talk about it and fix it or not. So that incentive structure has to change, both from the politician side and the empathy and understanding of what's actually beneficial for the taxpayer needs to change from the voter side, and to reward those who actually fix the problems, not disincentivize them from even bringing it up. And we are at the half hour right here. Thank y'all for being in the middle of it. We'll circle back on this upon our return. Thank you for being with us. We'll catch you on the other side.
This is Coach Tredaris Goff from Columbia Central High School football. You are listening to 101.7 WKOM in Columbia, Tennessee.
We at Hollins Pharmacy must be doing something right. We've been providing pharmaceutical services in the Middle Tennessee area for over 60 years. The guiding principles of our business are fast, accurate, friendly, personal service. We do not have long waiting lines, and our phone calls are answered by a staff member. We strive to get to know our customers by name, not just a date of birth or number. We are your locally owned hometown pharmacy, and we appreciate your business. We urge you to come visit us at Hollins Pharmacy, 1608 Hatcher Lane here in Columbia.
Hey, this is Derek Ransom with 10 Pin Alley, voted #1 family entertainment center in Murray County. We offer 32 bowling lanes, giant arcade, laser tag, bumper cars, and a full cafe and bar menu. We also specialize in group events, kids and adult birthday parties, company parties, sports team parties, and holiday parties. We're located at 322 East James Campbell Boulevard in Columbia. Call us today at 931-381-BOWL or visit us at 10pin.com. 10 Pin Alley, it's where the good times roll.
In today's uncertain world, you can never be too careful about your family's financial future. That's why the Parker Group, a part of Baird's Private Wealth Management, is offering a free second opinion on your financial plans. Let us review your current plan, and we will identify any gaps and offer suggestions to improve it. Please call the Parker Group at 931-548-3737. That's 931-548-3737. Robert W. Baird & Company Incorporated does not offer tax or legal advice.
This is Mark Curry at the Trailer Store. We are a local, family-owned business. Every day, I work with my wife, Susie, my mother, Becky, and my son, Justin. We offer a full line of lawnmower trailers, utility trailers, stock trailers, and a full line of trailer parts. We also offer service. Come see us at 1021 New Lewisburg Highway. Call us at 931-381-2795. That's 931-381-2795.
Farmer Johnny here, Taylor Family Farm. I want to give y'all a little look-see. We raise 100% non-GMO, grass-fed beef, pasture chicken, and pork on our family farm. Everything that we grow is raised with love and care to ensure the highest quality and nutrition for our family and customers. You can shop online at TaylorFamilyFarmTN.com or visit our farm store in person at Etheridge, Tennessee at 301 Dave Reisner Road. That's TaylorFamilyFarmTN.com for more information.
Hi, I'm Kelly Dobson, owner of Caring Hearts Home Healthcare here in Columbia. For over 20 years, we've proudly served our community, locally owned and operated, providing trusted care you can count on. We support seniors, individuals with disabilities, and even short-term care after surgery. From personal care to homemaking and companionship, our team is here to help you or your loved one live safely and comfortably at home. Call Caring Hearts today at 931-381-5470 or stop by in person, 1121 Trotwood Avenue here in Columbia.
Hello, I'm Rick Whitley.
And I'm Daniel Pollard from Jones & Lang Sporting Goods. We would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for the many years of support. Since 1966, Jones & Lang has been locally owned and operated and supplying teams from T-ball to college. Stop by and see what we can do for you. We offer a wide variety of services from silk screening and embroidery to our custom trophy and awards department.
We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and Saturday, 9 to noon. Remember, Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Hello, my name is Zach Maddox. I'm a proud third-generation owner-operator of Columbia Paint and Wallcover, founded by my grandfather, Ralph Maddox, in 1946. We offer a variety of paint and wallcovering products, but our passion is customer service. We can offer many personalized services and can come out to your house or business if needed. Come visit us at our Columbia location or our new Spring Hill location behind Church of the City, or visit us online at paintcolumbia.com.
This is Coach Devin Simler from Columbia Central Baseball. You are listening to 101.7 WKOM in Columbia, Tennessee.
Your future starts right here at Columbia State Community College. With campuses across Middle Tennessee, Columbia State offers affordable tuition, flexible schedules, and over 80 programs to study. Whether you're preparing for a career, transferring to a university, or learning new skills close to home, Columbia State has a place for you. Fall in love with learning and take the next step toward your future. Apply today at columbiastate.edu. Columbia State Community College. Your education, your future, your community.
Mezcal Cochina Mexicana. Delicious food and amazing service at an affordable price. Mezcal Cochina Mexicana. Located off of Nashville Highway in Neapolis, near Spring Hill High School. 2504 Care Lane. Authentic Mexican cuisine. Full menu. Family dine-in. Takeout. Delivery. Offering the best cocktails in the area. On the rocks or frozen, pair your meal with our famous margarita. Don't forget, Mezcal Cochina Mexicana for your next meal. Check us out on Facebook. Visit Mezcal Cochina Mexicana today. Proud supporters of the Front Porch Sports Network.
Farmer Johnny here, Taylor Family Farm. I want to give y'all a little look-see. We raise 100% non-GMO, grass-fed beef, pasture chicken, and pork on our family farm. Everything that we grow is raised with love and care to ensure the highest quality and nutrition for our family and customers. You can shop online at TaylorFamilyFarmTN.com or visit our farm store in person at Etheridge, Tennessee at 301 Dave Reisner Road. That's TaylorFamilyFarmTN.com for more information.
Discover Prime and Pint in downtown Columbia, where great food meets great company. Join us for weekly specials. Tuesday is Texas Tuesday, with a rotating menu that gives back to local causes. Wednesday is half-off burgers and pints all day long. And on Thursday, don't miss our prime rib dinner carved fresh by our chef. Make your night memorable at Prime and Pint, 105 East 6th Street, Columbia. Prime and Pint Butchery and Public House.
Columbia, your Love's travel stop just got a whole lot better. We've modernized our space at 1624 Bear Creek Pike at exit 46 to bring you more of what you want with fuel discounts, additional food offerings, and everything you need to hit the road with ease. Come say hi at the remodeled Love's in Columbia. We thank you for allowing us to be a part of your community. Safe travels.
Welcome back into the middle of it. I'm your host, Jeb Hart. I'm happy to be with y'all on this beautiful Thursday. Got Drake Pugh in the studio with me. How are we, buddy?
I'm good, Jeb. Doing good. Just keeping it rolling.
Well, I wanted to switch gears a little bit here and get us into some more pop culture stuff. I went to get into pop culture film and television stuff because let's just touch all the bases here. I went to a movie for the first time in a while. My son the other day went to go see Project Hail Mary on the Tennessee Aquarium IMAX, and it was awesome. Have you seen it?
I have not.
All right. It's the same guy that wrote the book The Martian. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I've seen The Martian. Yeah, that was a great movie.
So I read The Martian and saw the movie and loved it. And he had come up with this book years ago, and I wanted to find more stuff by him. And I read it and loved it. The Martian, I could see how they could make into a movie. I always wondered how they would pull this off because it was really complicated.
Yeah.
Yet they nailed it, and I thought they did a great job. And I hadn't felt that. The last movie I saw in theaters was the Top Gun Maverick.
Yep.
And it had that same, like, you need to see it in the movie theater type of feel to it. It felt big. It felt new and nostalgic at the same time. It It was a very good, like, this is why you go to the movies type of movie. It wasn't some like deep character exploration into grief and like it touched on so many things, but it wasn't. It was a fun, enjoyable, funny, beautiful movie to watch, and
Those are always the best.
I do highly recommend it. And the book is great, and it goes a lot more into the science. So like all of them are science fiction. Like in this, it goes to space and all this stuff, but in the books themselves, they actually lay out the math and the chemistry and the physics and stuff that go into why the ship goes, and all of that lines up correctly, even if it's hypothetical. So they're really well written books, and I highly recommend it to anybody. The other shift I want to make, because HBO just dropped the trailer for the new Harry Potter series.
Yep.
And I got to say, it looks good. Visually, it looks strong. The tone appears to be darker, a little more grounded. And you can tell that they're not just trying to, recreate the movies. They're trying to reinterpret the books a little bit.
Yeah.
Each season of this is going to be one of the books, and the kids are going to age with it, which is, exactly what you want from a long form series. And
exactly.
Most of the time, you got to think about it that like series don't get. I mean, you look at something like Lost, or name any movie that went, any show, especially like a mystery show or one that it always goes past its prime, because you never have a full story arc when you start. You don't even know if you're going to get picked up for a second season.
Exactly.
You can't plan out how you're going to scale it. Your job is just to stay on, and then you'll figure out the ending later as you add stuff in. And like sometimes you can't land that plane, and that happens a ton. And this one, you know exactly how many you're going to get, when they're going to be, what's going to be in it, and you have a very good roadmap. And that's what you want, like I said, from a long-term series, because the reality is the show has a lot to live up to. I mean, the original films are genuinely iconic. The casting, especially, was about as close to perfect as you're going to get, and those are the people that we like. That Dana Radcliffe, that's Harry Potter. Emma, that is Hermione. Rupert Grint, that is, I mean, we know all of these things.
We know them, yeah.
That's who they always were. And so if you're going to revisit the world, you have to have a very good reason to do so. And so far from the trailer, it does look like they might have that reason. But there's also the conversation that everyone's been having, and it predated the release of this, and that's the casting of Snape.
Yeah.
Because it taps into a bigger cultural trend we've seen for years of race swapping characters from different source material. You saw it with The Little Mermaid and Hamilton, the all ladies Ghostbusters, and Ocean's 8 and all that. And in most all those cases, people complained, and whether you liked it or not, it didn't really fundamentally break the story. You could swap the actor, and the narrative still held. And the people who got mad about it was just like, in the books it says he's white, or in, mermaids are white, which mermaids aren't real, so it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
But Snape is different.
Yeah.
And it's really important, because Snape isn't just a character. He is a feeling in that story. And from the very beginning, Harry distrusts him deeply.
Yep.
Instinctively. He cannot explain it. He cannot put his finger on it. But a running narrative is like, there's just something with that guy.
Yeah.
Now, and then as the story unfolds, you learn the layers to that, the history with his father, the bitterness, the resentment. It's a complicated moral arc, and it's very well done. But the casting choice gets tricky in this regard, is because Snape is now the only black professor at Hogwarts, and he is also the only character that Harry immediately distrusts.
But they try, so it's like they're trying to make it about race, so it looks like.
Yeah, and they're like, he's like, I can't, because in the original one with Alan Rickman, he has the hair. He does look very seedy, and like he very much gives off a you shouldn't be able to trust this guy thing, and that's a huge part of what this is. You're supposed to be the bad guy, Quidditch, everything else, and you assume that he doesn't trust him because of his actions, but he never does anything overtly enough to be like, that's why. You just feel uneasy by
You just feel uneasy, exactly.
And now you replace that with the one black professor, and you're like, I'm not racist. There's just something about that guy.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's like, come on.
Which, whether it's intended or not, it creates a narrative tension that did not exist before.
Yep.
And didn't need to exist, because now the audience isn't just watching, is Snape good or bad? they're also
Is Harry racist? Yeah.
how does this come off? How does this read? Because that matters, because you're telling a story that relies on clarity of intention. And when you introduce elements that can be interpreted in unintended ways, you risk pulling the audience out of the story.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean it can't work. It absolutely can. But it does mean that the writers now have to navigate something extra in order to maintain the original, the intent of the original source material.
Yep.
And they either have to lean into it, address it, or very carefully write around it in a way that doesn't, because that's such a central theme of the first books, is the inherent underlying non-nameable distrust. And that's the difference between this and those other examples I named, is that those other ones are just cosmetic, really. It's Ghostbusters can be women because Ghostbusters aren't real. George Washington can be a black guy because George Washington didn't sing, and I don't know, like that part. It doesn't change anything about the subtext of it. It is just who's playing the character, and you can suspend disbelief and do that.
Yeah.
But once you introduce that other layer about how the story feels, that's where people start to get cautious, because fans don't just want a new version. They want a faithful one that dives into it. Because there's so many people who've read all the books who I love the movies, but they didn't go into insert really important scene that they skipped over in order to keep it within, the 2 hours and change thing. This one, each chapter and each episode is going to be an hour. So all the stuff where he was living with his aunt and uncle in the state, that's a whole episode of the start of it, the backstory and all that. And you want a faithful one. You want them to do it. A lot of people are excited. You don't want it to be identical, but you want it to be in the same spirit.
Yeah.
With all that said, the show looks promising. And honestly, if anyone can pull it off, HBO has a really good track record of it. And they've got the budget, the patience for long-term storytelling. And I think they recognize where their bread is buttered, and they're not going to screw up this large of IP. They got good people in charge, but I am watching it closely, because when you start making changes to a story this well known, you're not just updating it, you're testing how much you can change before it starts to feel like it's something else. And with something as iconic as Harry Potter, that line matters a lot, especially to very vehement fans. I mean, if you look at the Lord of the Rings fans and the Rings of Power stuff that Amazon did, that was not for a lack of budget or a lack of effort. It was they strayed far away from the source material, added new canon. Because Tolkien, obviously wrote Lord of the Rings and Hobbit and Silmarillion and all the other books involved in it, was an absolute obsessive about backstory, and each character had their motivations, their history, you knew about people's great grandparents, their family tree were they went into so much exposition on each character that it was important. Then with Rings of Power, they just made stuff up and didn't do. And people got furious, even though, the production-wise was beautiful. They didn't cut corners or anything. It just was not faithful to the original source material. It's the same reason people hated the Star Wars show Acolyte. I mean, there was other portions of that with the gayest Star Wars ever, and that was the Kathleen Carter's kind of death rattle. But people who love Star Wars are mainly upset because they just made stuff up. They just inserted things into the lore and canon of Star Wars without consulting or even know if it was okay to do, or getting even the Lucas approved. People got furious with it when they just start being it was good. We'll make it better by making our own choices to one of the most beloved franchises of all time, because we know best. And that's where people start to get frustrated. And to loop back to the whole race switching or inserting of trans or gay storylines and all of that happened in movies that people do get very upset about. I don't get upset about it when it fits. People get very upset when you shoehorn it in for the sake of having that character there. When they add, because if you add that a trans character or a gay character in, and you make that a part of it, if it fits organically and adds to the overall, momentum and movement of the script or the storyline, think it's perfect. A great example of this is, Ted Lasso is a great side storyline. The player who was hiding that he was gay was in the closet, and that was a well executed storyline that added to the story. But just having somebody there, people just feel it's forced. When you could tell the intention of why it's there,
Yeah.
that's what, like when we're talking about with the Snape thing, you have to be very careful because you pull people out of the story, and then they suspend. You're supposed to get them to suspend their disbelief that they're watching a movie. They need to be immersed in it. Every element that you add in that lets people know that this is a movie that is produced. While we all know that it is a movie made by people with cameras and lights and a budget and an ad budget and distribution, and executives and agents, we know all of that. The goal is to get you so immersed that you forget it. And each thing you do that pulls you away from that takes away from the story because it pulls you out of it. Because you're like, that shouldn't, I know why you did that. And then you start thinking about the executive that was like, we need to have a trans person there. You pull yourself out of the movie and you're not in it. That's why it's a problem. Because like I said, the storyline in Ted Lasso was part of the story. At no point did you take a step back and be like, why is this happening? It was self-evident as to why it was part of the story because it fit and it added to it. And it added important depth that was completely flushed out. And they landed the plane and gave it the emotion that it needed to be inserted in there. And when people just try to shoehorn stuff, people get upset. And I think this is part of the reason the Snape thing is that way, is that it does feel like a purposeful shoehorn, especially when you had somebody that everybody out there, when they were talking about this a year ago, was like, oh, okay, obviously Adam Driver will be Snape. And then we were talking about who's going to be everybody else, but everybody was like, yeah, obviously Adam Driver is Snape. And when they went the other direction, people were like, okay, we'll see how this goes. But if you open it with, we'll see how this goes, you're already taking that step back of suspending disbelief and being like, okay, I'm going to enter this with some caution, which is not to say it's not possible to fix it or to stick the landing, but they have made the path a bit trickier. But again, we could all work out great. I mean, there was a ton of those same conversations revolving around the casting of Heath Ledger in Batman, The Dark Knight, rather. Is we all forget about it, really. But I mean, this Heath Ledger wasn't really we as a society did not view him as an overly serious actor. He was the rom-com, like 20-year-old kid from 10 Things I Hate About You, and I mean, he wasn't like he wasn't Sidney Poitier or like Daniel Day-Lewis. He was kind of like what Matthew McConaughey was during his like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days like area, where no one overly took him seriously. And McConaughey's was like a much slower transition into that with Mud and Dallas Buyers Club and stuff. This was major box office Christopher Nolan film, and we are going to take the dude from 10 Things I Hate About You, and he's going to be the most iconic villain ever. People were like, that is not going to work. And turned into the greatest, superhero villain in the history of cinema. So it absolutely could work. I'm not knocking it before, but it's a choice they made, and I'm interested to see how it goes.
Exactly. I have not seen the trailer. That's something I had heard. I had heard they were making a series, but I had not seen the trailer, so I need to go out and watch it.
Yeah, it came out, I believe, yesterday or late the night before.
I did see a clip, though, the other day, a Harry Potter clip that I don't remember seeing, because I watched the movies way back. And it was a clip of Harry's uncle and cousin moving away, and I don't know if his aunt had died. And his cousin goes, wait, isn't he coming with us? And his dad goes, no, of course not. And then Harry goes, yeah, no, I'm not. And then his cousin, who was a real snob, he for most of the series comes up to Harry and I think shakes his hand and just says, I'll miss you. He kind of had a little redemption.
The Dudleys, where did they move to?
I'm not sure. I can't remember. In the first movie, they moved out of their house for a little bit because it was like the wizard stuff was overtaking it, and they moved to some tower out in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, no, that was to get away from the letters.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the Dursleys, not the Dudleys.
I think Dudley was the son's name.
I mean, they never. Okay, I'm looking it up. They went to a safe house. Star of the Deathly Hallows Part 1, not at the very end of the series. It's part of the 7 Potters escape, where they all like change their faces to look like him.
Yeah.
Because the Death Eaters were at the Privet Drive place. See, I try to watch them it's one of those weird things. I thought about it this Christmas for the first time, that because I watch the Harry Potter movies at Christmas and I've watched them with my kids, but they're not. I mean, they have, because each one of the books is like a calendar year at the school, and they have Christmas as part of it, each book, because it's the year. But for some reason, because Christmas is a part of each one, that I've classified it as a Christmas movie. I mean, it kind of falls into the same category as like Die Hard
or Home Alone.
Home Alone happens at Christmas, but it's not. So we slot them into those categories because they're Christmas adjacent.
Yeah.
But then I also started thinking about, I forgot, some comedian pointed out a version of this a while ago, but then I rethought about it when I was watching it, because I don't want to claim credit for this observation, but I also don't know who the comedian was who sparked this thought in my head. It was like, you know, I was watching it at Christmas, and it made me think about what the guy said. He was like, so Christmas is about the celebration of the birth of Jesus and the Savior. He was like, in Harry Potter's world, wouldn't Jesus just be like some dude? Because like he could turn water into wine, be like, yeah, so can the first.
Yeah, so can the
Yeah, like what? He's just some dude, and like that seems like a weird overlap of Christian religion and sorcery, and but I don't know. They make a big deal about Christmas, so they're clearly a big fan of it. But I always thought it was weird. Like he'd just be some dude.
Yeah,
but
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and there's not be like, yeah, we went over that in class. Of course, you can turn water into wine. Come on, Jesus, sit back down. It's lunchtime. Like, yeah, like not that impressive, dude. But yeah, no, I've watched them more recently than a way back, but I'm excited about it. And I know it's a big risk to take, and things like this. If you look at like the Star Wars prequels, like 1 through 3, that everyone hated.
Well, they're not as bad as the ones that came after.
I agree. Well, because the ones that came after were just the first 3 dunce with different characters. It was the same story arc.
Same story arc, yeah, and all that jazz.
Blew up a Death Star, then they blew up a bigger version of the Death Star, which is the Star Killer base. Then in the second one, the bad people got some wins. Like, it's the same. Like, it really is the same.
It's the exact same story.
I mean, Han Solo, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it.
I don't know how anybody has, and it's been over a decade.
Yeah, Han Solo dies in that one, like the main, paternal figure in the first of the sequels of 7, 8, 9, and about halfway through, near the end, he dies. Same thing with Obi-Wan Kenobi. The amount of similarities there are a ton. And then when you talk about the similarities between, there's another comedian, is a different guy who brought it up. He was like, J.K. Rowling did not write a masterpiece. She wrote Star Wars with sucky lightsabers. And it was like, oh, what do you mean? A scruffy, talented orphan boy raised by his aunt and uncle was always thought he was different until a wise old man from his past, obviously incidentally the guy that dropped him off with his aunt and uncle, will take him on large adventures. He'll inevitably end up learning more about his mystical powers from an older, wiser wizard who's kind of high all the time. And he's accompanied on this journey by a plucky young girl and the scruffy comic relief. There will be a weird sexual tension between them throughout the duration of it, but she'll only have feelings for the scruffy relief. And you're like, oh, yeah, that does seem like there's a lot of overlap. And there's a ton of overlap with an old young Sherlock episode from like the 80s for Hogwarts and some other stuff. But taking on a challenge like rebooting something so beloved is always a risk. But if the money's there, people will take it, because even if it sucks, people are going to watch it. And that's kind of the state of affairs. It's always weird. Like, even if you hate watch it, people who love Harry Potter are going to watch it just so they can properly complain about it, so they can accurately bitch and moan about it. And there will be people that love it. There'll be people that get introduced to it. But yeah, that's my pop culture segment. Is there any?
There you go.
Is there any movie that's coming out or show that you are particularly waiting on bated breath for?
Well, I wouldn't say bated breath, but I am looking forward to the Mario Galaxy movie that's coming out, because I grew up playing all the Mario games, so it's just, and I saw the first Mario movie and it was cute, so my girlfriend and I are looking forward to that because it's nostalgic.
But that one will be good. I mean, that again is another one that falls under this is why you go to the movies. It's exactly what you think it's supposed to be. It's
exactly. We went and saw the Minecraft movie. I mean, I've played Minecraft most of my life. I still play that game, and it was a goofy movie, but it was still, it was fun.
It's supposed to be.
Exactly, it was fun.
Yeah,
and they're making a sequel for that too. It's coming out next summer, and I'm excited for that too.
I mean, I hope that Project Hail Mary lets studios know, because it had the largest opening weekend ever for an original script, not like a sequel movie or a legacy brand. It can show that you can make a ton of money by creating original stories.
Yeah.
We've leaned far too much on existing IP, to be fair, existing IP is what Mario and Minecraft are. They're piggybacking off of a legacy fan base and trying to print money off of it.
Exactly.
But we do deprive ourselves of new stories and new angles and new, tales that are worth diving into, that tell us different stories. But some of those are hard to make because you have to take risks to do those, and publicly traded companies try to avoid risk as much as possible, but art by itself is a risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope we can get back to more of that. And
absolutely.
I hope that Project Hail Mary continues to perform well, so that companies are willing to take that risk on their bottom line to create great and enjoyable movies, and not just churn out predictable yet monetarily stable reproductions of the same.
Yep.
And we are at the top of our hour. I appreciate y'all being with me today and this whole week. I hope everybody has a great Friday and a spectacular weekend until I see you Monday. I hope y'all have a spectacular weekend. Don't let anybody do your thinking for you. And hoping I see y'all on Monday. I feel more like I do now than when I